couplez les masses du festival, si vous voulez bien. Ça fait harmonieux.
Ils sont ajustables.
Ah, génial, quelle bonne nouvelle.
Karim, sans le masque.
Ouais, mais je suis obligé parce que...
Bonjour.
Alors, bonjour à tous.
Hi
Welcome
everyone.
everybody à la conférence de presse de Bac
Welcome
Nord
to
de
the
Cédric
Bac North
Jiménez.
press conference by Cédric
Alors,
Jiménez.
je vous donne quelques consignes. Gardez
A
donc
few rules.
bien précieusement vos masques sur
Please
votre visage.
keep wearing your
Quand
masks
vous avez des questions,
when you have
et
questions.
donc posez des questions. Quand vous avez des questions, vous levez le
Raise
doigt.
your hand
Et quand on vous donne la parole, vous vous levez pour poser
and stand up
votre question.
when you have the
Vous
floor.
dites votre nom, votre média.
Give your name
Une seule
and
question, et
who
après,
you
soyez
represent.
gentil
Ask one question
vous rasseoir
and then please
immédiatement. La conférence
sit
de
back
presse
down
va
again
durer une
immediately. The
quarantaine
press
de
conference
minutes
will
et se
last about
déroulera
40 minutes
en français.
and will take place in
Et je
French.
vous présente d'abord toute
First of all,
l'équipe,
I will introduce the
comme ça, là,
entire
comme
crew.
une vague.
Like a wave.
D'abord, Kenza, FORTAS.
First of all, Kenza, FORTAS.
François Civil.
François Cyril.
Karim LEKLOU.
Karim LEKLOU.
Le réalisateur Cédric Jiménez.
The director, Cédric Jiménez.
Gilles LELLOUCHE.
Gilles LELLOUCHE.
Adèle EXARCHOPOULOS.
Adèle EXARCHOPOULOS.
Et le producteur du film, Hugo
And the film's
SELIGNAC.
producer, Hugo SELIGNAC.
Allez, Hugo.
Alors, est-ce qu'il y a des questions? Je
Are there
commence en
any
attendant.
questions
Personne
for-
sur... Ah, une.
One question.
Monsieur.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Fikra Gibbons de
Hi,
l'AFP.
Secret Gibbons from AFP.
Tout d'abord, en fait, félicitations, c'est un
First of all, congratulations on this fantastic film.
Juste une chose qui
There is just one thing which disturbed me a little.
On est dans l'élection.
We are in an election year,
Moi, j'ai vu ça de
and I saw the film through the eyes of a foreigner,
J'ai voté Le Pen.
and I thought, yeah, maybe I will vote for Le Pen after seeing
Parce
this.
que les cités, les gens dans les cités,
Because the
le-
people
non, alors,
in these
non,
neighborhoods,
alors,
Ouais, c'est un...
les gens dans les cités, moi, je viens d'une cité à l'Irlande.
I come from an inner city in Ireland.
Attendez, laissez monsieur finir. Non, non, non,
Please
allez-y,
let the
finissez, monsieur.
gentleman finish his question.
Peut-être que c'est une blague prévue, mais...
Maybe it is an intentional joke,
Non, non, continuez.
Je vais terminer la question.
but I will finish my
La question,
question.
c'est en fait, à part de
The question is,
garçon, le petit bête sauvage,
a
qui
part of the young boy who is in the policeman's car
rappe et tout ça,
and who is into rap and so on,
les cités sont que de
the
bêtes.
people in the inner cities are brutes,
C'est une vue qu'on
are
a
wild.
toujours de la média française.
and that is always the point of view of French media,
Les zones qu'on ne peut pas passer. Que
that
les
these
zones
are
hors
no-go
civilisation,
areas, that
les
these
zones
are areas outside of civilization,
réimposer la
areas
loi
where we need to
française,
reimpose the rule of law,
mais pour nous-
lawless
mais
places.
super.
The film is
Mais
superbe,
quand même, il y a un problème.
but nevertheless,
On est dans
for me, there is a problem.
Et donc, vous savez,
We
pour-
are in an election year.
J'étais gêné, vraiment gêné.
I was very disturbed, and I was not the only one.
Alors, réponse.
C'est moi qui prends, c'est ça? Ok. Ok. Bon, ben, j'espère que Marine Le Pen ne va pas passer.
I hope that Marine Le Pen will not win thanks to me.
Je pense que, sincèrement, au contraire,
Frankly,
j'ai essayé avec le film,
I tried with the film to
effectivement, des zones qui ont
tell a story about
de grandes difficultés, donc qui peuvent
inner cities
paraître,
which are in great difficulty,
véritablement hostiles, mais je pense pas qu'il faille
which are truly
appliquer ça
hostile.
avec un vote
But I don't think that means that one needs to take a radical stance by voting for someone like Marine Le Pen. I think there is a much more social aspect. There is a lack of resources in those areas. The police lack resources. And all the social institutions as well. The lack of resources engenders anger. And of course, the police have to deal with delinquents, with drug dealers, and with this very densely populated area, which represents almost half of the city's population in Marseille. So that is one angle, but I don't think that this film is here to denounce areas outside of the rule of law. I feel that the policemen, just like the people they are confronted with a problem which is more social and potentially of education. And it is not through a radical vote that we will tackle the problem.
C'est une forte impression, en fait. En fait, on voit, c'est vrai, on voit
It is true. We see the people there. We see the young person. When Karim goes to their flat, the first reaction is to stab the policeman. Yes, because he is afraid. In a city, there are 2,000 people. Out of the 2,000 people, there will perhaps be 60 or 100 delinquents who have a stranglehold of the city and who create fear. So he's not afraid of the policeman. He is afraid of the reprisals because he is hiding a policeman at home. The problem is not necessarily from the police. It is complex. I think it is a shame that you saw the film in such a binary way. I enjoyed the film. The film is superb. I'm not at all surprised that Netflix took it on. Congratulations to everyone. This is very impressive. However, there is so much bias, and it is your vision which is so biased. Even when there is a trial which does not finish, it is just that aspect.
Ah, alors c'est sur quoi, pardon?
What is your vision? Your vision is very biased. It is only the point of view of the police. And therefore we had this trial, which was still ongoing when you were shooting, and the people concerned had not been released at that time. Why did you take such a position? Do you think that I'm defending the police in the film? I'm sorry, but this is not my opinion. I am telling a story where the police has difficult work to do in these areas. I come from those neighborhoods. I used to have problems with the police when I was younger, so I understand well what goes on there. Of course, the police find it hard to work there because there are difficulties. However, the law is the same for the center of Cannes or as it is for this neighborhood of Marseille. So I'm telling a fairly factual story. I'm not giving a complete panorama of the north neighborhoods of Marseille. I'm just talking about a legal case of an area of town which is difficult. The policemen are not angels, but they're not angels in front of them either. I hope that I have not fanned the flames of radical politics by making this film. I am talking about people who feel abandoned by the Republic, but everyone is abandoned in the area, whether it is the police or the inhabitants. Everyone is suffering. I think the solutions are social and not a radical vote, as you are suggesting.
Et puis, si je peux me permettre, il y a aussi quand même
I would also like to add
une histoire
that this is a story which is inspired by reality. It is not a complete X-ray of the facts. There is a mystery and fictionalization and filmmaking. It is not reality.
Alors justement, cette fiction
Indeed, this fiction
Cédric, et puis après, évidemment, je vous remercie à tous qui avez joué ces rôles-là.
of course,
Cédric,
I
comment
will
vous
also
avez
question the other
construit
actors.
ces
How
rôles
did
de
you
policiers?
construct these
Je pense que
policemen's
quand même, vous avez eu
roles
des conseillers
I'm sure you had
au
advisors
moment du scénario et puis sur le
during the
plateau.
screenwriting and also
Comment
on
ça s'est
set?
construit, presque ce trio, mais j'allais presque
How
dire
is this
cette
trio
famille
constructed? But I would like to say almost this
de
family
policiers
of
pour après
policemen and women.
explorer ce thriller, quoi.
Bon, bah,
Oui.
effectivement, on a des. J'ai
Yeah, and
rencontré
Estella.
les
Of course,
de la BAC Nord qui ont
I
été,
met up with the policemen from the back north
aussi
who
inspirés de ces-
were
de ces gens, de leur vie.
involved
Moi, ce qui
in this
m'intéressait,
trial,
c'était
and I
pas
met
tant
the
de
people in their
coller
lives.
à leur personnalité,
I didn't necessarily
à leur
want to
physique,
stick to their
que ce soit,
personality or to their
de
physique.
comprendre comment ils avaient
I
traversé
was
cette
more interested
affaire,
in understanding how they went
de
through
des personnages
this
sur des trajectoires humaines. Donc,
affair
c'est ce que j'ai
and to
fait.
see what the human trajectories are.
Gilles,
It's what I tried to do. And we also have the personalities
inspiré, pareil
from the
pour
city who are quite different
Karim
from
est
those
assez
that we have put in the film. Perhaps
c'était un mix de
the
tout ça, on
role
ne
of
raconte
Amel
pas
is a
la
bit
vie des gens.
closer. We are not
De toute
telling the
façon, on ne
story
peut
of
pas
people.
raconter
In
la
any case, when we
On
make a film,
inspirait
we
ces
cannot
principes du cinéma
tell
en
people's
2 heures,
lives.
on
We are
raconte
inspired
pas une
by them. In 2 hours, we're not telling the story of a lifetime.
à des codes dramatiques.
We are making a film using the codes of
On prend,
narration
on adapte,
and
adaptation, et
direction.
je pense,
We take and we
bon,
adapt.
On adapte le fait réel et
We adapt
et
real
en
real
crée une
facts
fiction.
and we
Voilà,
create
c'est aussi
fiction.
simple que ça,
I think it's as simple as that.
Il y a un attachement. Il y a un attachement aux gestes
Are
quotidiens.
you
Il y
attached
a un attachement, même
to
ces scènes
daily
qui sont
lives?
moins dramatiques, moins tendues. qui sont les
Less
scènes de
tense, less
barbecue.
dramatic scenes like the barbecue.
Il y a vraiment quelque chose de la matière quotidienne.
There is something
de ces
of
personnages que
daily
vous avez
life,
travaillés.
of the daily life of these characters
des
which you
gens,
worked
donc
on.
les gens vivent.
Yes, of course, these characters are
Par
real,
exemple,
are
toutes ces scènes,
people,
il y a
and
beaucoup
they
de
live.
improvisation de la part
There is a lot of improvisation in the scenes
avec qui j'ai eu la
from
chance de
the
travailler,
fantastic
qui ont-
actors whom I had the good fortune of working with, who were able to bring to life this daily
qui était
life,
important pour moi dans le film,
which is important for me in the
relie
film.
un peu les personnages au public.
It
et en fait,
connects the
on n'est pas-
characters to the public, to the
les
audience,
mecs de la BAC sont quand même des
and
des
the
policiers qui
policemen
sont plutôt tout en bas de la
from the
hiérarchie,
back
donc,
north
ils
tend to be
ressemblent
right at the
à
bottom of
des
the police
gens.
hierarchy, so I wanted to display them as very normal people.
Une question, mademoiselle.
Oui, bonjour, je m'appelle Yael Khan,
Hi,
je suis
Yael
journaliste
Khan,
d'information
journalist
à LN24.
for
Je souhaiterais revenir sur
L24 in Belgium. Wanted to come to the assault
quelle
scene.
préparation cela avait nécessité et quelles
I wanted to know how you prepared it and what difficulties you ran into to
Alors,
make this scene.
alors, la scène d'assaut était très écrite. Elle était
This
quasiment
was
identique
a very scripted
à
scene,
l'image.
almost identical to what we see in
Voilà,
the
assez peu
images. Very little improvisation.
Avec les acteurs, je ne leur disais pas trop ce
On
qui allait
the
se passer.
set with the actors,
Un peu
I
au fur et à
didn't
mesure du tournage, dans
tell
la
them
chronologie.
really too much about what was going to happen, so they discovered what was going to happen with their characters. They weren't certain what they were going to discover behind the door. I tried to recreate this in a live situation. That required a lot of preparation because action scenes are very technical.
Très encadré, très structuré
They
pour
need
ne
to
pas
be
se
very
noyer,
structured in order to avoid
de rush, de
being
scènes,
overwhelmed by a rush of
oui, très préparé.
changing scenes.
Et ça s'est très
It's a
bien
very
passé,
prepared
surtout
scene.
par rapport aux habitants.
It
Tous les
went
figurants
very
étaient
well.
des vrais,
With regards to the inhabitants, all the extras were real young
il faut
people
savoir
from
qu'on
the
est
inner
toujours très
city.
bien accueillis dans ces endroits-là parce
We
que
are always very well
ça
received
donne
in
de
these
très bons
areas
jeux,
because they're not used to very positive things happening in the area.
très agréable.
But the shooting of the film was something positive for them, and they were very good participants, very receptive, and very happy to be part of this adventure.
Question devant, oui.
Bonjour, Médium Maïs de Willer
Hi,
Cinéma.
Medium
Une question
Maïs.
pour Cédric par rapport à la ville de
Medium
Marseille
Cinema.
qui est mise à l'honneur
Question to
plusieurs fois
Cedric
dans ce festival
regarding
avec le
the city of Marseille,
qui de la même manière filme quelque
which,
chose qu'elle connaît. Alors tu filmes
is evoked several times in this festival. You are talking about a city
Comment on
which you
fait
know
pour,
extremely well.
faire un territoire de cinéma sachant que c'est
How do you make it into a cinema landscape, given that it's something which is very real for you?
d'une certaine
And do you feel responsible for a certain kind of truth when you come from the city?
Moi, je suis né, j'ai grandi à Marseille, dans ces quartiers-là.
Well, I'm not sure, but I certainly come from that part of Marseille. I am very moved by the city. I don't necessarily feel a responsibility, but I work with the heart. I'm not discovering the city, rather I try to
Les films
pass on the love I can have for the city,
un peu tendus.
despite
Mais la
the
façon dont la
tension
filmer,
there
oui,
also can be.
quand on aime, on fait mieux.
Of course, when you do things with love, you do them better.
Alors, moi, je voudrais commencer à poser des questions aux,
I would like to
aux
start
interprètes,
asking a few questions
parce qu'il y a,
to the actors and
deux femmes
actresses.
très importantes
There
dans
are
ce film.
two very strong
Je
women
peux
in this
d'ailleurs
film.
commencer par elles, si vous me
I
permettez,
will
messieurs.
start with them.
Absolument, avec plaisir.
You will allow me to, gentlemen.
D'autant
of course.
que Adèle, en fait,
Especially
c'est
as
vous la
Adele,
patronne, quoi.
you are
Dans
the
le
boss,
film,
in
il y a
fact, in
vraiment
the
une ou deux
film.
scènes où on voit à
There are a
quel
couple of
point
scenes where we see to what extent
ces hommes, Navarro,
these men, Navarro,
son groupe,
and his group
ils sont à vos ordres, vous avez une
are
autorité
under your
naturelle
orders, so
envers
you
eux et
have
tout.
a natural authority over them.
C'était touchant que
It
Cédric
was
vous donne
moving
ce
that
rôle-là, c'est-à-dire
Cédric
dans un
should
thriller
give you this
ô
role
combien masculin,
in a very
que
masculine
ce soit
thriller,
vous qui teniez un peu
that you should
la
in
baguette.
fact be the boss.
C'était pas un sujet en fait, justement.
Well, in
Pour moi,
fact,
c'est pas forcément de l'autorité, c'est plus de
it's not necessarily a question of authority, it's more a question of affection.
On risque de se perdre ou se blesser.
It's more important to tell the truth, even if you risk injury.
C'était absolument pas un
loss.
sujet, que ce soit justement une femme ou c'est vraiment une famille en fait pour moi.
For me, it is a family. That's what I
Sur le
felt,
plateau ou les personnages
be
d'ailleurs.
it on set or the characters.
Et Kenza, vous avez un
Kenza,
rôle qui souvent
You have a role which often
dans les films policiers sont un peu
in police
Alors,
thrillers
l'indique-
are somewhat
alors, l'indique,
reduced.
c'est toujours un peu péjoratif.
The
Et là,
informer
vous en faites
is
un personnage
usually
used
in condescending way, but here this is a very complex woman. She seems to have be wanting to save her inner city.
Très bien abordé. Après, oui, c'est.
Yes, you described it very well.
Comme vous avez dit, de
As you
sauver
said,
la
it
cité.
is a way for this character to try to save her neighborhoods and to show that she is fed up with it.
Avec aussi le personnage, avec Antoine.
And she works with
Ça
Antoine.
change d'autres formes d'indic, en fait.
She's quite different from other kinds of informers.
Complicité, il y a une forme
There's a real
d'amitié.
complicity, a form of friendship,
Antoine, pour moi,
Antoine. So Antoine was played by
une forme
me.
d'amitié, il y a une forme
There is a
de...
friendship.
Enfin, je sais que pour moi, c'était...
I know that
quand
for
Cédric
me,
a changé le scénario,
when
parce qu'à la base,
Cedric
le
changed
rôle
the
de
screenplay,
l'indique,
because
c'était joué par un homme.
initially the
C'est censé
informer
être un
was
ami à
meant to
moi,
be
et
a
quand c'est
man and
devenu,
it was going to be a friend of
une
mine.
femme,
And when it
Kenza,
became a woman
moi,
and
j'ai
then
trouvé,
Kenza,
c'était génial, et
I
justement,
thought
ça
the
revenait un peu de
idea
l'écueil,
was
comme on disait,
very
du
interesting
truc
and it
obscur,
allowed
des
us to
indices
take a bit of
plutôt
distance
obscurs,
from
et
the
je
usual
trouve que Kenza a
clichés.
apporté un truc,
And
très
I felt
lumineux.
that Kenza brought
Je
a
pense
very
qu'on a réussi à
radiant
créer une
aspect.
relation,
And I think we
les deux un peu
managed
ambiguë,
to
où on ne sait pas si-
create
s'il y a
a
un
somewhat
amour
ambiguous
impossible,
connection. We're not sure whether it's an
une relation un peu
impossible
frère
love.
sœur, mais je trouve que ça apporte, en tout cas
But I
pour mon
think
personnage, beaucoup de
for my
talent
character,
dans le réel.
it anchors him in reality.
On a eu avec Cédric depuis
And
le
that
début,
was
c'est
our
vraiment
objective with Cedric right from the start,
dans
was
Marseille, dans
to
quelque chose de
anchor the film in Marseille
possible.
in something as tangible as
Kenza, pour ça,
possible.
ça a été une
And
aide.
so Kenza was very helpful in this.
Si je peux me permettre, je continue avec vous avant de passer
I
à
will continue with you before going on to your two colleagues.
Vous composez un accent marseillais pour ceux qui...
You put on a Marseille accent
Vraiment, c'est
for
d'une
those who
subtilité
actually
rare.
come from Marseille.
C'est-à-dire, c'est pas, on n'est pas dans,
This is
dans le gros accent marseillais, il y a juste des espèces
Something
de
quite
petites
rare.
notes à la
It's
fin
not
des
a
phrases, comme ça,
big,
parce que ça, c'est
evident
difficile
Marseille accent. It
de le
is
faire comme
just
ça aussi
a
délicatement.
couple of accentuated notes in certain words. Is it difficult to do it with this
Hier, j'avais envie de tout
subtlety?
refaire.
Well, I watched the film yesterday and I
mais
felt
ça,
like
c'est normal,
redoing
hein.
everything, but of course that's
Si c'est
usual.
difficile, je sais pas, mais j'avais quand même Cédric.
difficult, I'm not sure.
Vous avez entendu, qui a
But
quand
of
même une
course,
légère forme d'accent aussi.
Cedric also has a very slight Marseille accent. Let's not
Un peu plus d'accent que mon
ignore
personnage,
it.
donc du coup voilà, c'était
A
une sorte
slightly
de
heavier
garde-fou,
accent
j'avais une
than
limite à
my
pas dépasser,
character.
c'était
So of
Cédric.
course this showed me
Non,
the limit that I should
Comme il
not
le connaît bien et
cross.
que c'est un excellent
As I
directeur
know him
d'acteur,
well and that he
d'un
is a
coup,
great
j'avais quelqu'un en face de
director,
moi, on a
I
fait
had
des lectures en
someone
amont. Moi, j'ai
with
été un peu
me
à Marseille
with whom I
aussi,
could do the
avant
readings.
le
We
début
also
du
went
tournage
to Marseille before the
dans
start of the
dans
shooting
les rades,
in order
écouter un peu les
to
accents et essayer de choper un truc
listen the
justement léger, quoi,
accents
pour pas,
and to try
pas
to
tomber dans
put on
l'écueil,
a,
justement, des trucs un
a
peu-
light accent to avoid the trap of doing too much.
Alors,
And thank you for your
Gilles.
compliments.
Greg,
Gilles,
Oui.
who is Greg.
donc vous êtes ce personnage, on sent quelque chose de...
With your
qui remonte à
character,
loin, quoi. Ça-
we
on
feel
sent que
something
ça
which
fait
goes
20
back
ans
a
qu'il
long
bosse là,
way.
qu'il y a-
He's been working
qu'il y a à
there
la fois
for
encore un
over
peu
20
d'espoir et
years,
puis
still a little bit of hope,
désespoir sur,
but a lot of
sur
despair
l'échec de- éventuellement
with
de sa
regards
mission et tout.
to
Vous avez aussi une
the
partie
failure
dans
of his
la
mission. You also have a
en
very
prison. Donc,
dramatic
la
role to play at the
totalité de
end
ce
when
rôle,
you're in
est-ce que c'est
prison.
rare de jouer un
Is it
policier, mais
rare
c'est autant de
to
gamme.
play a policeman across
vieux, vous
so
voulez
many
dire.
different, such a wide range of situations?
Finalement, c'est un policier qui exerce depuis
He
30
is
ans.
a policeman who has been
qui
working for
sacrifie à
30 years,
cela.
who has sacrificed
Voilà.
everything for his job. He
sociale,
has
ni,
no social or
sentimentale, familiale.
personal or family life.
Sa vie est dédiée à ce métier.
His life is entirely devoted to his job.
Les week-ends,
His
il les passe
family
avec eux, etc.
are his colleagues. He spends his weekends with them, and when everything tumbles down, he loses everything and he loses his footing.
Dont est inspiré
And when I met the
Greg, c'est
person whom
quelqu'un qui a vraiment
Greg is based on,
perdu le jour où
it's
il a
someone
été
who
arrêté.
lost everyone the day that he was arrested and found himself in prison.
Et j'ai trouvé que
It was
cette
a total
drame intime
sense
était
of failure
presque,
for him. I
pour
think
moi, plus
this
intéressant que la grande.
personal drama is almost more interesting than the overall
Alors,
story.
Karim, vous des trois, vous êtes peut-être le
Karim.
plus raisonnable.
Of the three, you are perhaps the most reasonable.
Celui qui essaye, on a l'impression de tenir la baraque là, de
You're
ce
the one
trio,
who holds the fort with the.
Comment vous l'avez
as part of the
senti,
trio.
ce personnage de policier qui en même temps a envie de.
How did you embody this policeman who wants to be promoted, who wants to have a normal life?
Vraiment, effectivement, je l'ai senti déjà premièrement
Indeed.
avec légèreté.
First of all, I felt a sense of lightness
Kilo pour le rôle, donc ça m'a
because Cedric made me lose a few kilos for the role.
à jouer en légèreté.
So that helped me to play lightly.
Puis plus sérieusement, je
But on a more serious note,
personnage,
I thought it was interesting to play a character who believes in the institution of the police,
qui a une ambition
He
de
was-
carrière au sein de l'institution.
who has career ambitions within the institution, and who suddenly,
Par des objectifs de hiérarchie,
because of the
franchir la ligne pour
objective set by his hierarchy, has had to cross a line in order to fulfill these
avoir une
objectives.
dimension sociétale aussi fort.
And I think
Puisque je trouvais que ça dépassait
this is
largement le
very
cadre de la police,
interesting
c'était presque une chose
from a social angle,
qui me semblait
because it goes way
généralisée à la
beyond the police force. I think it's something that can be extended to all of civil servants, who are always subjected to having to do more with fewer means.
et un polar français.
And I thought that was very interesting within a crime thriller. I thought it was fresh within the genre. And
Profondément heureux d'avoir
I was
la
very
chance
pleased to
d'incarner
have
ça,
the
et en
opportunity
plus,
to
la voix
personify
d'un petit
this.
garçon qui joue un film d'action.
And
Voilà.
there is,
Enfin,
I came back to this
le
little
travail
boy
du
who wants
producteur, quand
to
Cédric parlait
work in an action film.
il y avait une liberté de mouvement assez
There
folle.
is a lot of freedom of movement during the shooting of this film.
Travailler avec toute la figuration.
And the work with all the
En fait, moi, j'avais pas vu un arrière-plan aussi riche.
figuration, I've never seen with the
Vraiment,
extras,
des
I've
gens
never
qui
seen
incarnaient
so many
au
people
maximum,
who
ça,
were
c'est profondément bien passé.
embodying
Voilà,
reality
ce
so
personnage m'a rendu,
profoundly.
Profondément heureux et un instant de
I
ma
very
vie,
much enjoyed playing this role.
Mais pour ce qui est cette cette légèreté, alors
This
on a vu
lightness
que
you
le
speak of.
film, peut provoquer.
We have seen that the film can elicit political debate, which I think is good when an action film can spark debate, whatever the point of view. When it gives rise to these reactions, it means that it is powerful. It's rare that with these kinds of films, I'm an avid cinemagoer myself, and I find it's rare that a film talks about hierarchy which loses touch with reality, and I think it is great to find all these themes within an action film and to have these characters who feel abandoned.
La vérité du cinéma de Cédric,
Knowing
quelque chose que je trouvais assez
Cedric's
joli,
cinema,
c'est
there is
pas
something which I
fasciné par
think something which is interesting is that he's
assez forte.
not at all into violence. There are some very powerful action scenes, but there is never anything vulgar about the violence.
Chanceux, heureux et léger.
I'm very
Bravo, Karim
happy to have been able to play this role.
Et il y a aussi une construction, enfin, dans les dialogues, dans le
In the dialogues and the back and forth,
il y a le rythme, il y a la tension.
there is a pace, there is tension, and we know that violence is going to arise from one moment to the next. And even with the
Il y a un
female
équilibre
characters,
entre
there
le
is a
drame qui peut
balance
arriver à la
between the
seconde
drama,
et
which can arrive at any moment,
peut-être de l'humour nécessaire,
and
l'humour de la
form
peur,
of
l'humour de la complicité.
humor, the humor
Comment à
of fear, the
l'écriture et
humor
comment
of friendship.
vous avez joué
How
ça.
in the writing and how in the
Elle est
acting
rapide, hein.
did you
Scène, par exemple, dans la
did you embody this?
c'est énormément d'improvisation.
There is a lot of improvisation in the film.
Dans la voiture,
Avec le gosse qui est si bien élevé au début, par exemple.
With the young guy who is very well behaved at the start. Well, this was written into the film. Of course, he is It was very highly scripted for safety reasons because he is going the wrong way up a street, etc. But when he talks about going into space and so on, it's the three actors who were making suggestions, sometimes just spontaneous suggestions amongst each other during the shooting. I made very long takes. I just left the camera rolling and the car was moving and they were talking. Of course, there's a bit of everything there, but some very beautiful things emerged from this. I particularly liked the 3D ultrasound with the glasses. Yes, it was their own invention. I was behind, the camera was rolling, and I heard it in my headset, and I thought, oh yeah, that's pretty good. That's a good improvisation. I owe them a lot for their impros. There were sometimes some difficult moments.
Merci les gars.
And I thank you. I thank everyone.
Merci.
Thank you, but no thanks.
Hugo Sélignac, je voudrais vous demander, parce que c'est un film, quand on le voit, on se
When
dit,
we watch this film,
c'est un film produit.
we are impressed. This is a very produced film,
de ce
especially
niveau-là,
an action film at this level, with such
en tant que
a
producteur, quand
prestigious cast.
Cédric Jiménez
As
arrive
a
avec un
producer,
scénario
when
pareil,
Cédric Jiménez
qu'est-ce qui se passe?
arrives
On est
with such
affolé,
a
on
screenplay,
est
how do you
excité.
feel? Are
quel
you
état?
excited? What state are you in? When I met Cédric, he had come to offer me another project. 3 years ago, we had met thanks to Gilles, and he was talking about this film called Le Bac Nord, but he wasn't managing to get in touch with the police. And although we were talking about other projects, he came back to this one at the end of the project. And I said, well, 3 years ago, you talked to me about a project about the Bac Nord. The executive producer in Marseille, French Movie Connection, whom I'd met in the past, I called him and said, could you get Cédric in touch with the police? And he said yes. And so it started from there. Cédric and Audrey were very quick. Audrey Diwan, who is the co-screenwriter, from the moment we said yes and the shooting of the film, less than 1 year elapsed. It was thrilling for a first film, because I've co-produced a lot of films, but it was the first film that I produced solo, and I felt very lucky.
Et alors, il y a un... Mehdi parlait de Marseille, mais en général, il y a
Marseille.
d'être très
But you all have a way of being very physical. The sets move a lot. The cameras are having to follow the director of photography and so on. Was there like a kind of ballet? And even the two of you, when you're in the flat, when you are arranging a meetup, how do you make a film where you know that there will be constant physical tension? Gilles, for example, how do you play a role like this where you're constantly trying to run, to drive?
La tension du personnage.
Tension of the character.
On court.
Well, you run. You run and you drive. I could
perhaps
perhaps answer this question a little,
compris la scène évidemment à la fin de l'attaque.
including the scene at the end with the attack. I believe that it is the camera which follows the actors and not the other way round. So the camera works and follows the actors. I let the actors do what they want, and then I adapt the direction to what they want to do. Of course, there are other directors who don't do that, where the actors have to answer the needs of the camera. But for me, the camera responds to the needs of the actors. They are always moving, and so when the actors move, the cameras move, and I follow them. Is it pleasant to be followed? There is an absolute freedom in Cédric's cinema, even with his director of photography. There is never any direct lighting. Everything comes from the ceiling. It seems a silly thing to say, but for example, there doesn't need to be any marking on the ground to say that you need to go up to here, stop there, turn left. There is total freedom. It is a very human type of acting, and it is a style which he has created alone with his director of photography since his first film, and which is becoming more and more inherent in his cinema, and which for the actors gives them complete freedom. So in the action scenes, or the scenes in the car, or the intimate scenes, the actors are free to do what they want.
On me dit que c'est bientôt fini.
I'm told that we have almost arrived at the end. I just wanted to ask one last question.
C'est un film
the ladies or the gentlemen.
Évidemment, c'est un film sur la loi, sur la
It is a
police,
film about the law, about the police,
sur les zones difficiles, etc. C'est aussi un film sur les hommes et les femmes, en fait.
It is also a film about men and
sur
women,
la masculinité,
and about
une
masculinity
qui est endolorie,
a masculinity which is
qui est humiliée,
suffering,
puisque on
humiliated.
voit la scène où vous êtes
There is a scene where you are confronted
à des gens à qui vous ne pouvez pas répondre.
with people to whom
C'est un
you
film
cannot
sur la
answer back.
frustration masculine.
Masculine
Est-ce que
frustration,
vous l'avez
therefore.
senti, ça? Et vous,
Did you
mesdames, est-ce que vous avez
feel
senti ça aussi?
this? And the ladies, did you also feel
Vous aviez
this?
pensé à ça,
Is
à
it
cette chose
something
de
that you had thought
virilité,
through? The virility?
difficile, quoi. Ouais.
Difficult virility.
Une forme de vérité dans le film.
I think there is another virile aspect of the film.
Entre ces trois policiers.
Different reality, different relationships between these policemen, and a lot of sensitivity also. Earlier you were talking about cliches, and I felt that it was extremely important, and it is thanks to Cedric and the other actors that they were able to bring subtlety in, quite the opposite of the masculine macho image of the policeman. And I think it is a great strength of the film.
Cédric, vous l'avez fait...
Cédric?
Ces personnages d'hommes à la virilité un peu entamée.
These masculine characters whose virility is perhaps suffering. Well, these are characters who have high testosterone. They are field operators. But that's not what I was interested in. I was interested in their frailty. They are in a situation where they are fragile, where their faults are being underlined, and their trajectory is fairly dramatic. So the big macho virile males, that was not my thing. Even the character that played by Adele is a very strong persona. As Hugo was saying, it is the relationships between them which bring out subtlety.
Est-ce que j'avais envie de la mettre à l'image ou pas? Ça m'intéresse pas vraiment.
I'm simply not interested in basic virility, be it male or female. There's no difference. What is beautiful is to see how people live together.
Plus aucune question. Ah.
No more questions?
Allez, hop, la dernière, mademoiselle.
Last question to the lady.
Bonjour, merci beaucoup pour
Hi, thank you for this film and for the acting. The characters are very moving. I was wondering what happened to the informer at the end. I was very attached to this character. Does she end up in prison?
On va aller voir Bac Sud.
You'll have to go and watch Bac Sud.
On fait le 2 dans pas longtemps.
We'll do the sequel in a short time.
C'est une fiction malgré tout.
Yet again, this remains fictional. We have adapted reality. Kenza's character has been adapted based on several different characters. This person does not exist in reality. As such, of course, there were informers, several informers. I tried to run them all into one. She doesn't really exist.
Moi, je me souviens quand même d'une version où elle était pendue à un arbre.
A version where she was
On s'est dit c'est peut-être un peu hardcore.
hung on a tree. We thought maybe that was a bit hardcore. If you want to imagine, maybe I'm dead. Initially, it was going to be a man. I tried to bring together various anecdotes because, of course, the police have to work with informers in order to be able to have a visibility of what's going on in the neighborhood. But this person, this character doesn't actually exist. I know this character doesn't exist, but just for us as the viewer, what happens to this character at the end? Well, of course, we can imagine that she will run into a few problems because we know that people
Avec la police,
who work with the
en
police
général, ils sont pas très aimés de
are
l'autre
usually
côté, mais
not particularly appreciated.
comme ce personnage
by
n'existait
their
pas, ce qui
inside.
m'intéressait plus à travers ce personnage,
What I was most interested in was
d'Antoine que joue François, qui est obligé pour ce
the trajectory of Antoine,
horrible, qui est obligé
who is confronted with a terrible choice
trahir quelque
and who
part
has to betray
le personnage que joue Kenza pour pouvoir
the
sauver
character played by Kenza in order to be able to save the character played by Gilles, who is losing his life in detention.
pour moi dans
That was what was most important for me in this character, rather than the character in themselves. It was the
qui était mise en avant.
character played by François who was the most important in this relationship.
Elle va mourir, quoi. Voilà.
She's going to die, basically.
Bon bah,
Sorry.
sur cette note très gaie, je vous remercie
On this
beaucoup.
very happy note, I thank the team.
Je finis comme Gilles en dépression.